Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Mike, this is my whiteboard, and today we're going to talk about two different strategies created here on the Jade Lizard and the Big Lizard. We're going to compare both of them, contrast both of them, and we're going to talk about why we might use one over the other and what scenarios make one better for certain underlyings compared to the other. So let's get right into it. We'll talk about the Jade Lizard, which was the first strategy created by Liz and Jenny. If you've ever missed their shows or you haven't heard of them, check them out. They're on every day from 10:30 to 11:30. They've got a lot of beginner content, and they also manage their own portfolio and take viewer calls, so definitely check those segments out. But when they're looking at the Jade Lizard, what they really wanted to do was create a neutral strategy, but also something that was selling premium but had defined risk to the upside or eliminated risk to the upside. And that's exactly what they created with the Jade Lizard. So the beautiful thing about a Jade Lizard is that it does create that neutral strategy where we really want all of these options to expire out of the money, since we're going to be selling this for a credit. But if the market rallies to the upside, we don't have that unlimited risk. In fact, we don't have any risk at all to the upside if we set it up correctly. So it's a beautiful strategy that profits not only if the stock price stays within our specified range at expiration, but we can also profit a little bit if the stock price blows through our call side. So let's walk through how we set this up and what sort of environment we look for when we're placing this trade. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose an underlying that is at a price of about 75 or below. Liz and Jenny like to think of this as the sweet spot for this specific strategy because of how we set it up and really what we're looking for upon setup. So when we're looking at the Jade Lizard, we're going to try and collect around $1 or just over $1 to eliminate the risk to the upside here. So what we look for is, as I said, an underlying that's trading for 75 or below, and what we would do is look to collect about 70% of our premium on the put side and about 30% of our premium on the call side. So in this specific example, I'm looking at a stock at 75, and I'm looking at the put down here at the 70 strike, which would be completely out of the money for puts. And since I'm looking to collect just over $1, and again, I'm looking to collect about 70% of my premium from the put side, I found that the 70 strike gives me 70 cents, so I'm sticking with that put there. So I found my put side, and I'm going to sell that put there, but now I need to calculate my upside. So I would look above the market and out of the money for calls. If we remember, calls are just the right to buy 100 shares of stock at a certain strike price, and puts are just the opposite, the right to sell 100 shares of stock at the certain strike price. So when we're looking at options above the stock price, calls would be out of the money and puts would be in the money above the stock price. And if we're looking below the stock price, calls would be in the money and puts would be out of the money. So all the options you see here are completely out of the money because of that reason. So I'm looking at the options, and I'm able to see that if I sell a $1 wide spread where I'm selling a 77 call, which is going to be more valuable than a further out of the money call that I would purchase to define my risk at the 78 strike, and I can collect about 33 cents for that, that is really what I'm looking for. Because again, when I'm creating the Jade Lizard, I want to collect about 70% of the premium from the put side and about 30% of the premium on that call side. And since I'm looking to cover the width of my strikes here, which is just $1 wide, and collect more premium than the width of my strike, which would eliminate the upside risk altogether, this scenario would tend to be perfect. And of course, we're always looking for that 45 days till expiration window. We can vary from that. We might go a little bit more or maybe a little bit less, but our studies have shown that the 45 day till expiration window does give us the highest P&L per day because of that accelerated theta decay, which is going to be on our side. And really, theta is just the rate of option decay over time if we were to hold that price static and also hold the implied volatility static as well. So if we held everything in the market completely static every single day, our options should theoretically decay by the amount of theta that you see. And since we're selling premium here and collecting a credit, theta decay is going to be on our side, especially because if these options are decaying every single day, if the stock price and implied volatility doesn't move at all, then we're going to be able to buy back the spread for a lower price every single day. The less days till expiration we have, the less valuable these options will be. So when we're looking at the entire strategy together, we're selling an out of the money put and we're selling an out of the money call spread. But when we're selling this call spread, we're ensuring that the total credit that we receive is going to be more than the width of our call spread here. So since I have a $1 wide call spread, I need to make sure that I'm collecting at least $1, but more likely a little bit more than that, so that if the stock price does come up to, let's say, 80 or 90, I'm still able to profit by 3 cents. So let's talk about our max profit here. The max profit is going to be realized if the stock price stays between our strikes at expiration. And when I say our strikes at expiration, I'm really referring to our short strikes. We want the stock price to be within our short strike range, so between 70 and 77, because that means that our strikes would expire completely out of the money, which is exactly what we want. If we sold these options for $1.03, which is $103 in real world terms, and the stock price is somewhere between these strikes at expiration, or when we have 0 days left on these contracts, all these contracts are going to expire worthless. There's not going to be any intrinsic value or any worth with these contracts, so they're going to expire worthless and out of the money, just like we sold them. So for that reason, our max profit would be $103 if the stock price is between our short strikes at expiration. But since we did create this Jade Lizard where we don't have any risk to the upside, if the stock price is at 80 at expiration, well, of course, our short put would be completely out of the money and worthless, but we would have to buy back this call spread here for $1. If the stock price is above my calls, that would mean both of my calls would be in the money then, and I would have $1 more of value in this short call than I would have in this long call at 78. So let's say the stock price is at 80. I'm going to have to buy back this spread for about $1 of intrinsic value because that's the difference between these strikes here. But since I collected $1.03, if I collect $1.03 and I'm forced to buy back that spread for $1, if I don't want to realize any exercise or assignment fees, then what I would be doing is really profiting by a couple of pennies. I would have sold this spread originally for $1.03, and at expiration, if I have to buy back this spread for $1, I would profit by the tune of 3 cents. And after commissions, it would probably be more of a wash, but there's still not going to be any risk to the upside because regardless of if the stock price is at 80 or 85 or 90, it's not going to change the fact that I would have to purchase this spread back for just $1. So that's how we eliminate the risk to the upside with this strategy. When we're looking at max loss and break even, they're going to be the same values. So max loss is really just where if the stock price went to 0, then I would have to buy back my short put for this value here, $68.97. I would really have to buy it back for $7,000 because it's at that strike. But since I collected a credit of $1.03, that offsets my max loss by the amount of credit I received. So if we take the value of $7,000, if the company went totally bankrupt and went to 0, I would be able to offset that by $103, which brings my max loss down to $68.97. And because of that, my break-even is also going to be at $68.97. If we remember, when we're talking about the call spread here and having to buy it back for intrinsic value, if my short put is in the money by $1.03, which would really mean that the stock price would have to be at $68.97, then what I'd have to do is, if the stock price was down at $68.97, I'd have to buy back my short put that would now be in the money. Because my short call spread here would expire completely out of the money and worthless, I'd have to buy back my short put for $1.03 if the stock price was at $68.97 at expiration. But since I collected $1.03 in the beginning of the trade, that totally offsets the debit I would have to pay to close my position, which is why that is where our break even is. So there's a lot of reasons why we would choose this strategy, but there's also a lot of reasons why we would choose a big lizard, which is just a little bit different than this strategy here. So let's go on to the next slide and we'll talk through the big lizard and how it differs. So the very first thing you might notice is that we're using a different stock price. And when we're using big lizards, we usually like to deploy them in much larger underlyings. When we're looking at the big lizard, we're basically selling a straddle and then defining our risk to the upside just like we would in the Jade Lizard. But since we're dealing with a straddle, what we want to do is collect as much premium as possible to widen our break-even points. So as you can see here, instead of only collecting $1.03, I'm collecting $8.10. So to get a larger credit, the very first thing we can do is deploy these strategies in larger underlyings. The higher priced products are going to have higher priced option markets because of that. And since we're looking at higher priced option markets, if I'm selling a put and a call on the same strike, I'm able to collect a much larger credit than if I were to be selling this straddle in that lower priced product that was only $75. If we compare the two, maybe I'd only be able to collect about $2 or $3 if I sold a straddle in that $75 underlying, but here I'm able to collect a much larger credit, which widens my break-even points a lot wider. So here, the difference between this strategy is that we're going to set up the straddle first, and then we're going to look to define our risk to the upside. So basically what we would do is create the straddle first on the trade page, and we'd go ahead and sell the put and call on the at-the-money strike. So in this case, if the stock price is trading right at 200, the at-the-money strike would also be 200. If the stock price was trading at $200.10, we would still look to that closest strike, and in that case, it would still be 200. We're still going to be looking at that 45-day till expiration window, and we're really looking at the credit we receive. So if I just pretend that I've removed this long call here, and I just looked at selling that straddle right here, I would probably be looking at something like maybe an $8.70 credit, something much larger. But what I want to do is make sure that I'm defining my risk to the upside, but I'm also collecting more premium than the width of the call that I purchased. So let's pretend I was selling the straddle for $8.70. And I went all the way up here to the 208 strike, and I was able to buy this call for 60 cents. So if I was selling this for $8.70 originally, just the put and call here, but I can define my risk to the upside by purchasing an out-of-the-money call at the 208 strike for 60 cents, which still covers the width of the spread here, because if we remember, what we want to do is collect a credit larger than the width of these strikes. So here, I'm collecting $8.10, and I've got an 8-point wide spread here on the call side. So even if the stock price comes all the way to 210 or 220, I would have to buy back this short call spread for $8, but since I collected $8.10, I would be fine with that because I would totally cover that risk to the upside, which is really just the small minor difference between the Big Lizard and the Jade Lizard. And as you can see, I've got my break even at a much lower point than with the Jade Lizard because of the fact that I'm collecting a lot more, which moves my break even further down to the downside. So let's wrap all this up with some takeaways for you, and we'll look at the differences here between the Jade Lizard and Big Lizard. Well, the very first thing that we want to remember is just that the Jade Lizard is going to be trading in underlyings that are smaller than 75, and for the Big Lizard, we're going to look at underlyings bigger than 75. For the setup of the Jade Lizard, we're going to be looking at creating that 70% collection on the put side and about 30% on the call side. And for the Big Lizard, we're going to be creating the straddle first and then defining our risk after that, but ensuring that we're collecting more than the width of the definition we create. And one thing to remember is that the risk for both of these strategies are both undefined. Even though we are defining our risk to the upside, we still have that theoretical undefined risk to the downside. Although a stock price cannot go below zero, it can go anywhere in between there, and since we don't know where it can go, we would list this as undefined risk. So let's really wrap this all up with some takeaways and a few points that I want to make out for you here. So the very first one is that the Jade Lizard is going to be best for smaller underlyings, and the Big Lizard is going to be better for the larger underlyings. And both eliminate risk to the upside if we create it correctly. So all we need to do to create it correctly and eliminate that risk is just make sure that we're collecting more in total premium than the width of our call spread that we use to define our risk. Doing so allows us to collect more, and even if our call side completely gets blown out and we have to buy it back at expiration, the amount we pay to buy it back will be less than the credit we received if we set it up correctly, which totally eliminates the risk to the upside. So thanks so much for tuning in. This has been the comparison of Jade versus Big Lizard. If you've got any questions or feedback, shoot me an email here, or you can follow me at DoTraderMike. Stay tuned though, we got Jim Schultz coming up next.